Well, all of this is starting to play a heavy role into our existence, with China launching up a new military space station in 2010, and the current Phobos mystery. Now, Phobos itself has been a mystery since day one because it did not show up until 1877. We have astronomers looking at the planet Mars for over 100 years. The telescope had been created in 1608, and no one looking at Mars had ever reported moons. The only time that moons ever came up about Mars was in fictional tales like Gulliver's stories, Gulliver's Travels. So when we start to look at Phobos and Deimos, these two moons of Mars that just suddenly appear in 1877, and at that point, then they establish another city-state in America, on the world. They put the Cleopatra's Needle up on the Thames in 1877. I wonder sometimes if it's to mark the arrival of these moons. These moons are now trying to be database and classified. We've had at least 6 Phobos satellites that have gone up from Russia and American rockets. Every one of them that has attempted to look at Mars has been lost, or at Phobos has been lost. There's Phobos 1, Phobos 2 of the Russians that somebody either just turned off the satellite, a technician in there, or something else strange occurred, because what happened with Phobos 2 is it vanished upon arriving in a synchronous orbit around Phobos, and its last image was of a 14-mile-long craft that the satellite took a picture of and then vanished from the view of the control room.
Right. Now, by the way, these are in the public domain, so people can go out and check and go through the archives and find that all the satellites that were looking at Phobos disappeared.
That's absolutely correct. And even a Russian Air Force Colonel, Marino Popovich, came out, held a surprise press conference with the Russian consulate in San Francisco, and unearthed these last photos taken by Phobos 2, showing a cigar-shaped object 15 miles wide, and demanding, what is this? And we have not looked at Phobos
Tough questions,
since this time. At the Phobos, we realized that, okay, if we've lost 6 satellites as they go into orbit of Phobos, this latest, Mars Express, got the closest, was the closest satellite to Phobos. It arrived on March 3rd to do this closest flyby of Phobos. They turned it off. They turned everything off. They said they could not use the cameras. They could not use any instrumentation because it would throw off their test, which was to try and see inside of Phobos. Yeah. Which, if you follow my theories, that's also why they bombed the moon, was to see inside of the moon. But the curious note being that they shut down all of the factors on this Mars Express.
Isn't that interesting?
To realize that, as you were saying, we are entering an energetic field in space. The Hubble just returned photos of Pluto turning red. When you look into, as I was tracking in the 90s, solar cycle 23, as it was reaching its peak towards 2000, you would clearly see a connection between the solar flare eruption and then massive superstorms on planet Earth 3 days later. Well, as I've been tracking recently with sun cycle 24, as it's been so erratic and even dead quiet, which is even scarier because that means the eruptions will be even larger when they do come. Now we're moving from into the apex of sun cycle 24, but we're finding that the solar flares now take 5 days to reach planet Earth. So there is an energetic field that we are entering. This is provable scientifically. We can see all of that. We can see it with the planet's heating. We can see it with these effects. But on top of that, we're dealing with iSCAT, Sura, HARP, and all of these ionospheric heaters or large radio antenna transmitters that are acting basically as ground-based solar flares and interacting with the ionosphere in a negative fashion.
That's a good way to look at them because they are ground-based solar flares, and they can bounce off an image around the world, and they can also directly affect and move the jet stream, precipitating major changes in the Earth's climate.
Well, why do you think El Nino hit Hugo Chavez as he started announcing HARP was causing earthquakes? Let's shut that guy up. But who's held accountable, right? We're left with that question because there's an ionospheric heater in every nation, at least established major nations, and NASA is now setting up a whole new, and this was the story that we were going to get into, beam waveguide deep space network antennas, and the first one to be set up is there in Canberra in Australia. So I don't know if Michael was watching and saw maybe my report on the effects from the satellite view in Australia. The strange droid eye, we covered it, Dr. Deagle, on a show that came up over Australia and was taken by satellite photograph. Now there's been a number of these, and you can go find these anomalous satellite photos over Australia. But this first one that I noted was directly over a hexagonal antenna array, which is run by Boeing right there in Australia. They also have Project Wormwood there that is watching for this next sun to come through, and a number of crazy and amazing things going on in Australia. But
yes, I was actually online when that was happening, the anomalies on the radar maps, and I didn't see the one in Melbourne, but I was online when the one in Broome, Western Australia, was happening, and I actually rang the Bureau of Meteorology and asked them what was going on, and the guy just gave me some excuse that it's a problem with the radar system, but then about 4 or 5 of them happened.
Sure. Stay right there.
So what's happening now, and the reason I'm bringing Phobos to people's attention and have been for a couple of years now, trying to let you know that they're going to cover this story. It's going to be important in the disclosure movement. We have Buzz Aldrin announcing the monolith on Phobos, and when the Mars Express got close enough to Phobos, it actually missed and was not in a good position to see the monolith on Phobos. And they mentioned that in the news report, so it's not in Buzz Aldrin saying it was either the hand of God or aliens that put it there. But what we're getting into now is disclosure, and of course disclosure has to be of this frightful, fearful alien race that's coming to take over mankind. So we have new movies like The Fourth Kind coming out to express to you the symbolic nature even of the owl in connection with abductions. They have Fife Symington coming out saying, that V-shaped craft I saw in Phoenix was real after he lied to everyone and dressed up at his aide as a gray. Where I still want to know where they got the gray costume before that press meeting. That's one thing question I want answered. We're seeing Hillary Clinton with Lawrence Rockefeller running around with Paul Davies' book, Are We Alone in the Universe? And the Telegraph put out a special poll to say, what would you say to E.T.? Now, the common theme that people were saying to E.T. was, stay away from here, humans are horrible beings. And this has been the programming that we've been watching unfold as they came out with the limits to growth with the Club of Rome statement documents that we all had to read in college, telling us that humans are evil, overpopulating the planet and destroying everything and should die. So as they asked people to say, what would you say to E.T., they all said, don't come here, we're dangerous. That was the common theme. And then we find that they sent The Day the Earth Stood Still, a film with Keanu Reeves, showing that humans were too evil to exist on planet Earth and that we should all be destroyed by some alien force. And they simulcast that movie to Alpha Centauri through a satellite relay. So telling the aliens in the closest known inhabited galaxy that we are evil and should be destroyed. This is the message that they want to keep putting into the humans so that we believe it. And because we see hardly any of our world, all of our world is transmitted to us via radio frequency waves and teletransmitters, that we're receiving this image of humanity that is false. And when we find that humans were actually good, caring, loving, nurturing people that are led in moral agendas to kill. So we're fighting for the right reasons, but for the wrong people, and people shouldn't be fighting because they're being engaged in this warfare.
Yeah, they're being shoved into one side or the other of the dialectic, which is why even the truth movement, and I've talked about this many times with Professor Jeff Grupp, who's on Tomorrow Hour 1, may become the nidus for a new, what I call, in the words of Anthony J. Hilder, a new neo-Nazi movement that will be even more neo-Connish than the previous one under the baby emperor George Bush Jr. To
do with the Mars connection that is to our planet and how they're binding consciousness. We've had this ancient Mars connection through Egypt throughout time using geometry, which they've established all over the planet. Every single one of our civilizations have had this geometry in place in force. And using this geometry, it appears to me throughout this show that they are trying to realign the planet to a specific position so that they can allow something to come in. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah. what
I
they're
know
doing.
it sounds very...
They're using what's called, that's why we have astral lines, ley lines, etc. So they're able to open up what's called the interdimensional gates. Some people call them stargates, but they don't really understand what this is. That's why even where they place cities as capitals of countries and where they do things has to be involved with the sacred geometry. And most people don't realize that the occultists run the world. They do it every civilization. People think, oh no, they don't have anything to do with this is all foolishness. They don't understand that it is how the world is run by the globalists.
Absolutely.
Amazing stuff, isn't it? Well, of course, Freeman, we'll have you back soon. You're coming back on March the 25th for another remarkable show. Thanks very much.